they've come to realize something that we know because we've done a lot of work and we do a lot of study on it, that alcohol is a toxin to the body. It's a toxin to the cells. And so that information's been out there. One of the things I think happened is that after that pandemic, and even during the pandemic, there was a huge spike in alcohol-related health issues, mostly liver issues, with younger people, right? Younger people were showing up at the hospital with liver problems, with cirrhosis of the liver issues in their 30s and 40s, which is not something they never used to see that until people were in their 60s or 70s. And I think what happened, people started saying, what's going on here, right?
I'm Matt.
Hey, I'm Steve.
Hey, I'm John.
This is the Sober Friends Podcast. We're here for the sober curious, the new guy, and the old timer. We're here to talk about the stuff anyone looking to live alcohol-free has to face day to day, and how we overcame those struggles. We speak for no 12-step group, but we do try to remain anonymous. You're not alone. This is the Sober Friends Podcast.
Oh, hello, Steve. Although I see you all the time, I haven't seen you on the podcast in a while, so very happy to see you again. We are going to talk a little bit about the Surgeon General's warnings on alcohol. But first, I wanted to share something that I posted on TikTok that got a little away from me. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Had a great day with our hike with our buddy Timmy today.
Hey. Tim went on a hike?
Yeah, he wanted to start hiking. Actually, there's a whole group of people who want to start hiking, so we're going to try to lure some of them in. But yeah, Timmy and I went out locally, but nice, almost 7-mile hike. So, which was pushing it for him. Yeah, if you are, we'll put you in this loop, and we'll let you know when we schedule them. And if it seems like something you want to try, I'll let you know. Come
yeah,
and join us.
I would. If it's going to be a group thing, I'd like to be involved with more people.
Sounds good.
Every once in a while, I play this as the stand-in for the grumpy old man in AA.
You're a real crumb bum.
Well, his name is Frank Rizzo. He's been dead for a very, 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 very long period of time. And he was a mayor of Philadelphia back in the 1970s, a real divisive figure, and not somebody I really look up to. Known as a very racist man, and so divisive that they put a statue up and they've recently taken it down.
You're a crumb creep.
So I always was enjoying the fact that this guy was so angry at the reporter, so livid, so much hate coming out of him, and yet refused to swear.
I'm telling you, get away from me.
So he's kind of my stand-in, so I kind of edited a video together of this thing and put it on TikTok, and it did pretty well. So the TikTok videos that I put up are for the modest little TikTok account to promote this podcast. 200 to 400 is about the range of what the videos typically are doing. See, now he's popping up here. See, this is the problem. I can't do two things at once. So 200 to 400. Every once in a while, what I consider going viral happens that I get up to 1,500 to 2,000, and his video went up to about 3,000. I'm like, wow, this did pretty well. And then the next day, as I saw the comments change, it went to 15,000, and then it went to 30,000. And as of right now, it's at 64.7K.
Wow.
So that's a lot.
Yeah.
And, I always wanted to go viral. Not anymore. Because even if I put on here, I put, newly sober, meeting an old timer at one of my first AA meetings, and, this guy's mouthing off. And it's like, I just was looking for a coffee. And he's screaming about, I want to fight you.
I want to fight you.
Which is,
You are a lush, I can tell by looking at you.
So I put that in there, and it's clearly this is about AA. And these people are like, Mayor Rizzo's the best. They don't make him like this anymore. He didn't take crap from anybody. Rizzo ruled, the best mayor we ever had. What's wrong with you people?
Welcome to the world.
You see that guy?
Welcome to the world of social media.
You're a creep. Get away from me.
So I'm like, oh, it literally, now I know what it's like to have a big account because I can't manage this.
Right.
I can't, I see the comments on that and I just skip by.
Right. It's hard.
So
Yeah. When you have all kinds of comments and, 60,000+ views, it's hard to keep up with it. That these creators who do a lot of work on those things, this is why they make money. It takes work to keep up with a account like that.
yes, it does. Like the closest I got for recently, last couple days, around like big numbers for actually sober stuff, is it did almost 7,000 when I talked a little bit about the Surgeon General, talking about how alcohol is a carcinogen. And we'll talk a little bit about some of those comments, but just to get you up to speed. So if you really want to hear the science of this, Jill Teets put out a bonus podcast episode on Friday. I think let me tell you what she called it, so I get this right. Sober Powered is her podcast. And she actually really helped me understand going a little beneath the hood because she's a scientist. So her episode is Alcohol and Cancer Risk, the Surgeon General Warnings Explained, which was really good because it talks about what this warning is and what this warning isn't and how radical this is. Steve, what have you heard, if anything, about this ruling?
First of all, it's been out there for a while.
Yes. Something Jill talked about.
Right.
This is not new.
This is not new, right? This is not new. It's been out there for a while. I don't know. For me, paying attention to it, certainly over the last year, 18 months, maybe a couple years. So it's probably been out there longer than that. Just that's when I've sort of picked it up. That those stories we used to hear, they talk about the French European thing. A couple glasses of red wine is actually healthy for you. Like those have been pretty much disavowed, and that no amount of alcohol is healthy, right? They've come to realize something that we know because we've done a lot of work and we do a lot of study on it, that alcohol is a toxin to the body. It's a toxin to the cells. And so that information's been out there.
Yep.
And I one of the things I think happened is that after that pandemic and even during the pandemic, there was a huge spike
Oh, yeah.
in alcohol-related health issues, mostly liver issues, with younger people, right? Younger people were showing up at the hospital with liver problems, with cirrhosis of the liver issues in their 30s and 40s, which is not something they never used to see that until people were in their 60s or 70s. And I think what happened, people started saying, what's going on here, right? So I just think that, and listen, Surgeon Generals are Surgeon Generals, depend on who they are and what kind of stuff they're going to put out. This one looked at it and said, it's only a recommendation, right? He can't force it, but it's a recommendation. I don't think it'll happen because of the administration we have coming in. But I think it put it out there in the news. So I'm comfortable with that. And, I'm a non-drinker. It's interesting. And just as a side note, it was my wife and my anniversary yesterday. We went out to dinner. And
happy anniversary.
Well, thank you. And we went out to dinner, and I never drink. My wife gets a glass of wine or something, and at the end, and the place knows, the place where we go, right? They sign up, you put in certain things. They knew it was our anniversary. I didn't even know I had signed up that information, but we walked in there. They said, "Oh, happy anniversary!" And I'm like, "Oh, okay. I must have signed up somewhere." Gave them that information. And at the end of the dinner, the waiter came over and looked at me and says, "Do you not drink at all?" And I'm like, "No, I don't drink at all." Because I guess he was going to maybe bring out after dinner champagne or something. And instead he brought out a little dessert, right? So, and I thought about it like, there's a lot of people out there today who don't drink at all.
Yes.
And again, my wife drinks. She's a normal person. She's a normal drinker. I don't judge people on it at all. And I mean that honestly. I don't judge people on it at all. But I do feel like today, I think that's why a lot of people today are trying these new things, these dry Januaries, which we've talked about. They're trying this kind of stuff because they're starting to realize that there's lots of health risks due to alcohol, due not just to the alcohol itself, but the sugar that goes with it, all that kind of stuff. There's a lot of stuff going on there.
The worst thing that ever could have happened is this idea that moderate drinking could be good for you.
Yeah, I agree.
So I am by no means an expert on this. That turned out to be false. And there's all other things that it's tied into sort of a Mediterranean diet, but there's other things that are going on in the lifestyle besides the wine drinking or the booze drinking.
Right.
That more physical activity, eating more natural foods or eating olive oil, Mediterranean diet, fish, that it could be the case that you're eating some things that are really good for you that could overcome that, or people don't drink as much as you think. The idea of moderate drinking, something like 3 ounces of wine, which is it's a splash.
Right.
And I knew this as a drinker, but I still filled up my glass. You get one of those big giant wine glasses.
Yeah.
They're not designed to be big and giant to fill it up. They're designed to be big and giant because it allows the aroma and to get the wine specifically on a certain part of your tongue. You're supposed to way underfill them. Not fill them up, but people like us, we use them as an opportunity. I'm only having one. No, you're having half a bottle.
Right.
And it's like 3 ounces of wine, maybe a week. And that was what was considered healthy. And then when you go above that, then the health benefits drop off markedly. Now we know that anything is bad. It's a carcinogen. Alcohol's bad. And Jill was talking about, it causes, the body breaks it down into aldehyde. I'm butchering it. But it reminds me of some of the Joe and Charlie stuff.
Right.
Where they talk about that it breaks it down into acetone. She didn't say that it broke down into acetone.
It's not, right. There's another name that they use, right? They say acetone, right. But it does. It breaks it down. I just saw something, and it must have been on a news thing. I don't know if it was on social media, but they talked about how your body breaks it down. And it talks about how the byproducts of as your body breaks down are just, they're toxic. That's why you get cirrhosis of the liver, right?
Yes.
And they're toxic in small amounts, but your body is pretty amazing and usually can handle small amounts. But that's why if you drink too much, the toxins get in there. But they're toxins to cells. They're toxin right down to the cellular part of your body. And that's what and again, people say, well, yeah, they look. You know what we have today? We have better science today, right? We do. We have better science that we could study at a much more detailed, finer level. We didn't have that ability 20 years ago, right? To do that cellular stuff as much. So it's not that the science has changed so much. It's just that we've been able to do a better job with it, And listen, I know it was. I mean, listen, that's, if anybody who drinks like we drank, you're hungover, you don't feel good, there's a reason why you don't feel good.
You can't be good on the body if
you drank poison all night long. That's why you don't feel good.
Yep.
So, listen, I think it's a good thing. I do
too.
I think it'll help. I do. I think it'll help the curious people, the early people who are thinking that, hey, I wonder if I should be still drinking. I noticed that my daughter actually is starting to do a lot of mocktails and stuff. Like they'll come over, hey, we had a party and we had these new mocktails, right? I don't know how much of that they're doing, right? But they're doing it, right? So that's a regular conversation. It's like, hey, we had this party and we found this new mocktail that we're trying, So people are doing it. Normal people who are just trying to live a healthier life are starting to think about those things.
Mm-hmm. I think about what my son eats. He's never had alcohol before. He has no desire for it. He knows his family history, but he also has concerns about his ability to play sports and to work out and to be healthy. And he struggles just not to lose weight. The amount of exercise he does and the amount of weights that he lifts, he's constantly telling, and he eats. He'll wake up in the middle of the night to eat because he's so hungry, and he'll drop 10 pounds easily. I gained like 5 to 10 in December, and it is making me pull my hair out.
Right.
Because I had worked so hard on it.
Yep. Went through the same thing, right? Was really cruising along, holidays, all of a sudden, boop, boop, boop. And you're right. Someone like your son, who's one of these, at his age, for what he is, he's a high level athlete. He needs to eat. He needs to eat constantly in order to do that. And listen, good for him. Good for him that he's found a different outlet for him, and let's hope that he stays that way. And he should. My son was the same way. My son certainly, when he got older, drank and did his stuff, but he was always active. He was an outdoors kid, right? He was a rock climber, hiker, that kind of stuff. So, I think everything he did was in moderation, right? Because of the same thing, right? My son has never been heavy, never struggled with that weight issue that I struggled with my whole life. Always took care of himself really well. So hopefully your son is going to do the same thing, right? It's going to be a start for him, and he knows the history, and he'll continue on with it.
He does a lot of research on food and exercise, and when I want something, when I need help on eating or exercise, I'll ask him, and he'll write out a plan for me at 16, and it looks pretty solid because he just watches YouTube videos on this stuff all day long. This is all he cares about, is what's healthy, what's not, what exercise should I be doing. If I do this exercise on this day for this amount of time, what results will I get? Right. And he's 16, and he's really, really good at this stuff. And he tells me about the kids who are stoners or who have had house parties and got drunk. And there is almost that in itself, the drinking and the drugging has almost become a subculture, and a subculture that not everybody looks highly upon.
Right.
There is a little bit of you're more of the outcast if you're using, as opposed to you're not drinking at all. That gives me some hope.
Yeah, I mean, you're more in tune to that with, because you have kids in that age group. I'm way past that myself. So that's good to hear, right? Because it wasn't always like that. Although even when I grew up, and I came to age in the early 70s, early to mid 70s, there still was that divide. I mean, if you ask me, most of the people drank and smoked pot, but that wasn't the truth, right? Just that the people I hung around with did that.
Yep.
There's a lot of people who didn't, and there was a lot of my friends who certainly, especially with pot, they drank, but they never smoked any pot or very little of it. It just wasn't their thing. But it was widely accepted, is what my point, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if that's the difference, but again, I mean, it was a little different back there, right? Drinking age was 18, right? So there were plenty of 18-year-olds in high school back in that day. So there were plenty of people who were in high school who were legal drinking age. And now it's different. It's 21, so it's been pushed back out. So it's good to hear that this, society has changed that, especially at good school. I'm sure it's different at different schools, but that when you look at that, you're like, those aren't the cool people anymore, right? The people using are not the cool people anymore. That does give me some hope too, right? Gives me some hope that maybe this next generation that's coming through will do a better job, because it is out of control. Drug use, and we all know about the fentanyl overdoses and that whole epidemic. And like I said, there was this huge spike I don't know what it looks like now, but I just remember coming out of COVID, a huge spike in the number of really, really bad cases of alcoholic damage to people's bodies, and young people going in for major, major problems.
I think part of it also as well is, I can speak to Connecticut. I don't know where you are, but in Connecticut, there is a dispensary like on every block.
Yeah.
You can't drive. We have this really lousy mall near us, really terrible mall. And there's a dispensary. There's must be like 3 dispensaries around this mall on either side. Any way you go to get in the mall, there's a dispensary outside. And the idea of just getting edibles is more of a big deal, I think, a lot with adults.
Oh, absolutely.
And adults will just go pop an edible.
Absolutely. It's out there by a lot of people. No question about it. It's very big, and you're absolutely right. I think a lot of it is no longer smoking, but it's definitely a lot of it is edibles these days because it's just so much easier, right? I mean, you can do them anywhere. And I agree. Listen, in Connecticut, again, depends on where you're listening to this. The way Connecticut did their pot stuff is the towns could vote to have dispensaries or not. So depends what town you live in. The town you're talking about is the town I live in, and they decided to have them. And I think there's 3 or 4 of them. And we're talking about a town of about 60,000 people, not a big city.
Yeah.
And there's at least 3 that I know of. There could be a 4th one, right?
Mm-hmm.
One just opened up a few months ago. And
I guess I wasn't realizing it was a town by town thing, which kind of makes sense because in my town there are none.
No. Yeah.
But there's one in Vernon, and there's a bunch in Manchester.
Yeah.
Right next to the Chili's. So after you have your
right.
You go for your fajitas, you can get your
or go to the dispensary first and then go for your fajitas.
Yeah, either or. So let me go into some of these comments here. These are because you mentioned we know a lot more. And I'm going to go into a little bit of that. So now it's a problem. Alcohol has been around for thousands of years and once was safer than water to drink. Worried insurance companies will stop covering policies if you drink. Let's see. Now they separate the ingestion of alcohol versus food to determine cancer risk. Sounds like a miracle. They just want to create a carcinogen tax. Somebody said alcohol actually detoxes us. It doesn't cause. It causes cancer. So does 90% of food we eat. So does the sun. So does the air. We should just live in a bubble. All right. So this is a stupid comment. And you don't have to drink to live. I do need sunlight. I do need to eat. You do have to go outside. So there is always a part of risk that you have to take.
Right.
Living life. You have to calculate the risk that's worth. But it's like, okay, I'm going to take a calculated risk in drinking. You don't have to drink at all.
Right.
You don't have to smoke at all. All of a sudden, everything is basically a carcinogen. Food, air, Wi-Fi. So we get into that. Wi-Fi. All right, so that's a subset of things. There's no problem with Wi-Fi, and if you're one of those people, don't at me. This after mandating vaccines. So now we get into the conspiracies.
Right.
Now it's a conspiracy. There's no conspiracy here. This is what nuance is gone in society, nuance in the gray area. What you said, the iPhone did not come out of the blue. There were Treos, and there was the Palm Pilot, and there were cell phones before that. If you look at, I don't know, anything, you know, when the airplane came out, there were hot air balloons before that.
Right.
And then there was the airplane, which didn't go very far. And they built on top of the next thing to the point of we put a person on the moon. But a rocket didn't come out of nowhere. It was built on somebody else's foundation. Any medical research that we have is built on what we know at the time, and you build on top of it. Plus, you add in the technology
that you have that helps improve it. And sometimes there's conflicting information because you have some studies that tell you one thing and you dig a little deeper. It's like we had a variable we didn't consider.
Right.
You got to go with the information you have at that time. And we work at the speed of a smartphone. And people say, well, you didn't say this before, so it must be wrong. You got to go with the information you have.
Yeah. And again, you're right. There's a big, what happens with a lot of this stuff, you get into conspiracy theories and, and that's the problem with our society at this point. I follow a doctor and an ethicist out of Sweden. She's really, really good. Mm-hmm. And she always talks about if you live in a place where the pandemic became politicized, right? Like it wasn't politicized in Sweden and a lot of other places. And I'm sure she's talking about the United States because, she probably has a lot of followers from the United States. And that's the problem, right? We've become politicized. Science has become politicized.
Yes.
And most people, not all people, but most people who are making those comments are non-scientific people, right? Somebody said, like, if you don't teach a society science, then they're going to elect non-science people, right? I mean, like, if they don't know anything about it, they're going to elect these people who aren't scientists and stuff. So, and again, there could be some differencing of opinions, and there are some things, there's some things happening. Listen, I won't get into the politics of it all, but I'm very interested in seeing what good can come out of the next administration, right? I think there could be a lot of bad coming out of there, but there could be some challenges and some good. We'll see. We'll see, if how this stuff gets disrupted and upset, and that maybe some good things can be brought out of it.
Well, he's not a drinker. And
no,
neither
he's
is
not
the
a
current
drinker.
president.
So we'll see. We'll see about that. But so listen, I try not to be judgmental. When we were hiking today, I said with Timmy, we were talking about it. We actually got talking about pot smoking a lot today, and I said I'm not judgmental on people, right? If somebody comes in and tell me, like, listen, I was really struggling with alcohol, but I didn't struggle with pot, and I'm smoking a little pot. Go for it, man. I don't, I'm not one of these people. I'm not like Frank Rizzo, like, I'm going to fight you. Get out of here. You're not sober.
You are a lush. I can tell by looking at you.
So if that's what you want to do, and so I said, if it's not ruining your life the way alcohol was ruining my life, God bless you.
Right.
God bless you. Maybe you don't belong in AA or certain programs, but God bless you. No judgment on my end. And I know people who have done that, and I don't know, they seem to live an okay life. So it doesn't work for me. What we talked about was there's no question in my mind, even though I gave up smoking pot in my early 20s, mid-20s, I should say, there's no question in my mind, if I decided to partake in it, eventually I would go back and drink. And drinking is a problem for me. So I could play around with the fact, well, I wasn't really addicted to marijuana. But I know that it'll lead me back to drinking, to alcohol, which today, again, I know is poison. So I can still do that. I'm an alcoholic at heart. And unless for this alcoholic, unless I'm working a program, unless I'm doing some work, unless I'm talking to other alcoholics, then I could absolutely fall back into that and convince myself that, drinking would be the way to go. And I know that's a lie today.
This is where I'm abnormal. I never had a good experience with cannabis. Never, ever, ever. It never felt good. It always came on real fast, and it went from 0 to 100. And it was a feeling that I didn't want to feel. It was uncomfortable. And so not an issue for me, because I remember every experience, the handful of times I did it, I didn't like it. And it wasn't like I didn't like it. It's like, take this away. Make this stop. I hate this. Pain pills? I could see myself crushing and snorting that, because that was the best ever. and I had my hands full with alcohol. So why do I need to get involved with that other stuff when I have alcohol?
Right.
Here's the thing that I look at. No, if you think that people who have problems with alcohol today are going to stop drinking because of this decision, they're not. Because remembering my experience, it's not going to happen to me. I'm not going to get cancer.
Right.
You don't believe that. Here's what I think is the likelihood, the best possible scenario. I link it to smoking. When the labels came out on smoking, I remember those labels were pretty benign. I remember as a kid, the Surgeon General has determined smoking may cause health issues.
Right.
It was rather benign. Now they're like smoking could cause
Right.
Quato from Total Recall to come out of your belly. I mean, they're pretty graphic now. But that took decades.
Right.
That took decades for the rate of smoking to come down. And where it is now versus even the 90s or the 80s is nowhere near that. There are smokers now. Although, you know what? I now am surprised when I see a smoker.
Yeah, me too.
Because I just assume they would vape. I see tons of vapors, but I don't see smokers. And that just took decades. I think best case scenario with this could cause alcohol to come down over a long period of time, that we may look 30 years from now and say this was the pivot point, although I think it already had started.
Yep. I agree. It took a long time, right? You got the big corporate machine out there, right? That's going to fight it, right? The alcohol lobby is going to fight this tooth and nail, state by state, because it's pretty much regulated by state. Some of it is, they're going to fight it, and they're powerful, and they have a lot of money. So just like the tobacco people did, but I think you're right. Over the next several years, I think more information will come out, and that more people will realize it, and there'll be less of a pushback, and people will decide that, we probably do need a warning. We probably need to let young people know, right? We need to let young people know that this is really, really bad for them.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I mean, and that's what the cigarette warning did, right? It's like if you're 70 and you're smoking, so what? But if you're 16 and thinking about starting smoking, maybe you need to really think about what it might do to you. Listen, I had a sister who died from lung cancer who was a lifelong smoker up until the last 20 years of her life. But, it is what it is, right? I watched it happen. It's ugly. It's terrible. So, that could be alcohol, like you said, 20, 30 years from now, where people are that much aware of it.
If you have esophageal cancer or pancreatic cancer, there is a likelihood that you smoked and or drank.
Yeah.
If you are a heavy drinker, pancreatic cancer, esophageal cancer especially, right. You get that from, people think of like smoking as like lung cancer and stuff.
Right, yeah.
It's pancreatic cancer too. Pancreatic cancer is a rare thing, and unless you have a genetic defect, it usually has to do with some lifestyle things, especially smoking or drinking. So that's really my thoughts on that. I'm not going to go into the science. I'll let somebody like Jill do it because she's got the pedigree. I can only pretend and take the stuff and break it down. I thought it was worth talking about. I'm in favor of the labels. I'm not in favor of an extra tax because that hurts. If you're taxing booze, you're taxing the poor. Right. You're taxing the people who can't afford it. And the people who can't afford it, it's not an issue. Not a fan of that. That's what has, it has brought smoking down, but it's people who can least afford to pay it who are the ones paying the taxes. And I'm not a fan of that. But I think it is worth getting the message out there that it's not just a social thing. It really, no amount of booze is really going to be healthy.
No,
and it's
I agree.
The message here is the kids before they have their first drink, as opposed to 50 years old, you've been drinking all your life. That is not the thing that's going to get you to stop. And I'd love to hear what you have to say. What's your thoughts? Did this get you hopeful, pessimistic?
Are you one of those people who, we had a guy run for rep in my district who thought we should shut the electric companies down because you can import with your mind electricity. I don't want to hear from you if you think that way. We're not going to answer those questions, but if you want to have a thoughtful conversation, I'm going to have it. All right. You're off to go see your Lions.
I am off to watch the Lions tonight. My daughter just texted me, "Hey, you watching the Lions game?" So hopefully that's good news. I'm like, "No, I will be in a few minutes." So
yeah, you'll catch up on the commercials.
I will. All right, Matt.
All right.
Great to see you.
Yeah, great to see you too. See you soon.